Hello and welcome to the Discover History YouTube channel, and today I want to look at a traverse board. And a traverse board is a very important device used on board ships in the past, in particular the Mary Rose, in particular any of the ships of the Spanish Armada era, or even pretty much up to the Napoleonic era. It was such an important tool. And a traverse board is this device just of here, and basically it's made out of wood. It has a compass carved into it, and what you will notice is it has the normal ones, for example north, south, east and west, but we've also got the individual ones that run in between those. In other words, we've got 32 points of the compass marked onto this piece of board. To add to that, we've also got little holes on those 32 points radiating out like so, and I'll explain that in a moment. In the centre, where you would usually have the magnetic compass, the needle, what we've actually got is a set of cords and some tiny little pegs. Most of these pegs were made out of animal bone. They could also be made out of whale bone, or just plain old wood basically. But then when we take a look at the bottom of the board, we've actually got some more holes and another chart. And what we have here is basically some columns that goes across here. Where the knot is, by the way, that divides two separate columns. So that's one set of columns, that's another set of columns. That's very important. I'll explain it all in a moment. And we've got these different rows. And at the very top here we have a cord, because when the ship is in harbour, when it's in dock, this thing would be hung up and would not be used at all. So how is a traverse board used? Now, if we take a look, let's say 400 years ago at the sailing of the Mayflower, they would have also had one of those as well. And that's because when you're on board a ship in the past, and technically this system still continues today, you are on duty for one watch that lasts for 4 hours. So you're literally on duty for 4 hours. What ships used to do in the past is only have enough hammocks, for example, for half the crew, and therefore you have a hot hammock system. So you get one watch going on duty, and then the watch coming off duty will get into a warm hammock, and that continues all the time, if you've got my meaning. Not very healthy, as you can imagine, and a spread of disease or lice and fleas, things like that, must have been very, very common. So our naval day on board the Mayflower or the Mary Rose or any ships of the past, any sailing ships of the past, you would have been designated a 4-hour shift. And what that actually meant is you went up on the deck and you did all sorts of duties. Everything from altering the sails, bringing in anchor cable, keeping watch, for example, cleaning the decks. The duties were numerous. But within your 4-hour watch, you had the ringing of the ship's bell. And this would be rung literally every 30 minutes. And it was a reminder, really, telling the crew that they had to do something. And what that usually meant is you were checking the sails, you were checking the speed of the ship, if you remember, using the log line or the chip line. You were checking the depth of the ship using a lead sound. You were doing numerous things. You were intensively concentrating for those 4-hour shifts. And technically, if you've got the ship's bell ringing every 30 minutes, you're on watch and listening out for 8 bells. And that's why if you go to some coastal places, for example anywhere down Portsmouth, Southampton, even on the Isle of Wight, and this sticks out to me because when we were working at the Isle of Wight Carisbrooke Castle, just outside the castle gate there was a pub, and it was called the 8 Bells. And it was called the 8 Bells literally because when you've heard 8 bells in your ear, you know that your shift is done. That's a 4-hour shift. You can then go back to sleep or relax, drink, play music, that sort of thing. Now, When you were on duty for those 4 hours, very intense, remember you were very busy doing one thing or another, if you were put on recording navigation, you could, for example, get a bit of paper, write down the speed the ship was going in knots, and maybe write down the direction the ship was going in. The only problem is when you're on a deck and it's stormy, and you may get caught in a squally storm where you get rained on, there may be lightning, there may be waves, there might be a huge swell throwing waves over the deck. That little bit of paper may blow away, or it may get absolutely sodden. And remember, we're writing with quills and ink. It's no good whatsoever. So what would happen is, when the 4-hour watch started, someone grabbed the traverse board. So imagine it, I've been in a hammock all night and I've heard the bell ring and I am now on watch. I am now on my 4-hour watch. I know every 30 minutes there is going to be a bell. When it gets to the 8th bell, I know I'm on the last leg. I can then eventually go back to sleep or relax. So the 4-hour watch begins. I will unhook this. Let's say we've just left port, so I would unhook this, and this is used as a notebook. And this is the amazing thing, this is a notebook. Don't write it on a bit of paper, the ink will get wet, the paper might blow away. You record everything in your 4-hour watch on here. That's why these little holes and these holes here are enough for recording the direction and speed in that 4 hours. Every 30 minutes you will check the direction and speed. So for example, we've just left the harbour, we're just sailing out to sea, and in the first 30 minutes we've heard the bell ring, ding ding, we now know there's going to be 7 more. I will then look at the compass and go, we've been travelling north. So I take the first peg, bear in mind that's the centre, that's us leaving port, and I place the peg directly in the north marker here. So for the first 30 minutes of this shift, of this 4-hour watch, the first bell I have added that we're going north. I also need to ask the person that checked the speed, and for example, the person checking the speed may come back to me and say we've been going at 2 knots. So he will then take another peg from the bottom section and he will count across on his first half an hour of his shift the number of knots we were doing. For example, let's say 3 knots. So we were going 3 knots, so you go 1, 2, 3. And then we will then carry on, and then 30 minutes later when the bell will ring again, remember there's 8 bells to a watch, we will then have to record the direction we were going in. Now let's say we were now travelling slightly to the east. So in the next half an hour we put a peg in that we're slowly removing the direct north direction, we're slowly coming about, and then maybe we've hit the wind in the right direction. So in the next 30 minutes we're now going, let's say, at 5 knots. So we put the peg in there. Hopefully you will understand this. And then by the time I've got the 8th bell ring, that's my watch finished, that's my shift over. This can then, with all its pegs in it, get taken to the chief navigator or even the captain, who can look at it and he can make a note within a warm, dry cabin where he can get the charts out, he can get some note paper out, he can bring out his ink and pen, and he will notice that in the first 30 minutes we were heading north. Then the next 30 minutes we started to head off the north track, and we also know that the first 30 minutes we were travelling at 3 knots, and then in the next 30 minutes we were travelling at 5 knots. And this, like I said, is literally a notebook. You wouldn't be able to remember all these records of the direction and the speed. You can't really write it down for obvious reasons, as I explain, but this is perfect because it's big enough not to be lost, and these pegs don't come out easily. When the 8th bell has rang, in other words the watch is over, this can then have all its pegs taken out, and this will be given to the next watch, and the next watch will do it all over again. When you're navigating at sea, for example, on the Mayflower, on the Mary Rose, any of the ships of the line years ago, that was really important, because when you're navigating, there are two key things that you need to know. One is the speed, that's why we take the knots on the reel. The second one is really the direction you are travelling in. If you plot on a chart the direction and the speed, you should have an approximate, pretty accurate to be fair, an approximate of where you are on your journey, maybe to the Americas, maybe just around the coast of England, maybe, or the coast of Britain. It's a very important device, the Traverse board, very, very important. As you've seen so far, we're doing quite a few of these navigation things. The main reason is the fact that this year we are celebrating Mayflower 400, the famous sailing of the Mayflower to the Americas. As I always say, we're linked to everything in Worcester, and what you have to remember is our link is the fact that Edward Winslow, born at Droitwich, went to the King's School, was a printer, and sailed with them, and he became a leading character, set up a lot of treaties and pacts with the native people over there. It's an amazing thing, an amazing man, Edward Winslow. But like I said, on board a ship you'll have a compass. I showed you the binnacle compass. You'd also have a lodestone for making sure that that magnetic compass was always very, very magnetic. You would also need your log line, as I mentioned, and even a sound to check the depth of the water. And today's video, the Traverse board. There are several other pieces of equipment that I will be showing you over the next few weeks, over the next few months, which will hopefully give you an insight of how people travelled around many years ago without the invention of a GPS system. Anyway, on that note, hope you're having a fantastic weekend. The weather is set to look really, really good. Remember social distancing, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.